Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's bonus episode of iCast Fireball, which we call Meet and Geek. My name is Jacob, a.k.a. Lance Thalen, who will be your host for these special episodes where we dive into the geekdom of each of our casts and how we have come to play this game that we all love. Today's cast member in the spotlight is our guest cast member, the incredible, the amazing, the spontaneous, the ruinous, the everything. It's Josh. Josh, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so good, man. I'm doing so happy to be here. You just way overhyped me there.
That's my role. That's my role as the host. I hype you up so much that it's only downhill from here. People really only listen to the first 2 minutes of this.
I'm so pumped to be doing as much as that. Honestly, you guys are a blast, man. I hope a ton of the Sneak Attack and Titans people come check you out and listen to everything you guys are doing.
I'm telling you, we have loved every second of you being on it, and it has been unpredictable every second. It is, what is Josh gonna do next? And oh my gosh, this is great.
I feel like Thomas and Reed could sit down and have a group therapy session.
Therapy session
of DMing
how to
Josh.
Screw up your plans. Well,
yeah.
I think any DM could do that for any player.
Oh yeah.
I know. I've heard so many horror stories from DMs, and I think even the best players will give their DMs nightmares.
I did an interview on a show, another D&D show called How Not to DM. It's just like the best name for a show to talk about dungeon mastering.
There should be a spin-off show of how not to play D&D.
Because honestly, there are more wrong ways, I feel like, to dungeon master.
Oh, 100%.
And that's half of, I think, the fun of being a dungeon master is doing it wrong and mudding your way through.
Well, I think it's just the malleableness. If you're willing to work with each other, it becomes beautiful. I know I am privileged to have Thomas as a great DM. You had Reed, who was amazing as well.
Oh man, yeah.
And I have heard also horror stories of DMs in some groups where they're like, yeah, it didn't go so hot.
I think, yeah, and I feel like even good DMs have bad days. You've got kind of the whole spectrum, but yeah, it's a human thing, and anytime you do something as a human, you're kind of introducing a lot of chaos.
All right, from Josh, humans are chaos. That's our theme.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
All right, we're going to get into some questions to get to know you, Josh, specifically your background around this. First thing is, how did you get into D&D? Everyone knows you from Sneak Attack or your own podcast with the Titans of Altera. What is your first experience with this?
So, I grew up a very conservative Midwestern upbringing, and so...
You said sorry a lot to people.
Yeah, pretty much thought D&D was the devil, the same as
Oh.
I wasn't so bad. I have friends who grew up and they were told that Smurfs was bad. They were told that Lion King was bad because Rafiki and so it's
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I wasn't that sheltered, but fairly sheltered. And the
Harry Potter book burning.
No, we didn't burn books, man. No. My family liked books, and my parents really pushed us to make our own decisions. So that was
awesome.
I'm very grateful for that. Even though we were still pretty sheltered in terms of the people and environments we were in, always was encouraged to make our own choices. Anyhow, so I got into board games heavily in my 20s, and my buddy Reed, the two of us and another friend, we'd work on making our own board games for fun. Every week we get together and just make board games. And I had this idea for a board game that was like Lord of the Rings, fantasy driven, where it's different characters and they move around on the board and they have different moves and abilities. And I'm telling Reed about it, and he goes, my guy, that's D&D.
Been done.
I was like, I don't think so. Because I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And I think I would know if I was doing the devil's work. And lo and behold, D&D's awesome. And everything that I had been told, or sideways told growing up in that evangelical church, was very wrong. About a lot of things, but mostly D&D completely wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the stem from the 80s. I mean, the recent, I don't know if
The
you watched
Satanic
this,
Panic.
the Satanic Panic, Stranger Things played off that, its most recent season.
Yep.
Was on that idea, and I remember I watched it. I didn't grow up I didn't have D&D around me, so I never grew up with this like stigma over it. But I do remember in college finding the old Tom Hanks movies, Mazes and Monsters. And if you have never seen that movie, it's Tom Hanks when he was like, it's one of his first movies. I think it's on Amazon, or it was on Amazon Prime. It is the most beautifully absurd thing I've ever seen. Because it plays off the Satanic Panic of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
About this kid who starts playing the game Mazes and Monsters. And they're like, you're supposed to be in college. Get your life together. And he's like, this is where I'm happiest. And then he like goes crazy. Like he has like a mental breakdown. And he like starts running through the streets of New York City, like imagining he's in this game. And it's just beautiful. He has the best monologue on top of this like building where he's like, where am I? Where is everybody? And it's just that's my terrible Tom Hanks impression.
That's a great Tom Hanks impression. I got my parents to play D&D years later after we started a podcast and all that. And so in order to get them to play, my dad's a local church pastor. He was a traveling evangelist for a long time. There are certain Christian
style.
Not that a little bit, but specifically in like one branch of the evangelical church. And so there's like some circles where we were like semi-famous. Like I could walk into a certain church and everyone would know who my dad was. And but anyhow, it was a little weird. So I knew that if I was going to get them to play, I'd have to do like my research. So I read up about the Satanic Panic. And man, it was all BS. It was all just absolutely like fabricated, like fear-mongering. Like it's like there was the moms against like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. There was this like angry mom group.
I've not heard about that.
Oh yeah, they like made tracks and stuff. They were the ones that basically like pushed for legislation to ban books from schools, like the D&D books from schools.
The D&D books, yeah. Or fantasy kind of series.
Yeah, and a lot of it just stemmed from one woman who lost her kid and refused to take any real agency in that, and so just decided to blame her kid on the world. And like she fabricated like content from the books by chopping stuff up and rewriting words and then publishing it in papers, and like it died out pretty bad once people realized she was kind of a fraud. And then I think D&D experience, so I came into D&D in 2012,
okay.
Which was it was kind of just at the back end of 4th edition.
Oh, okay.
So I built a character in 4E, and we had a game. It was kind of a bunch of us who had never played before. A bunch of us, like my brother, some of our friends, my friend Reed, and actually, if you know Sneak Attack, Reed, the guy who DMs Sneak Attack, he was our first DM. He'd only played one other D&D game, but he had the most familiarity. He had a couple of the books, and then Mike and Danny and my brother Ricky, my brother Ricky is in Titans, the Titans podcast, and Mike and Danny are in Sneak Attack. And then a couple other friends that we brought in, and man, it was so much fun. We played every week for like 3 years or whatever. Wow. So we played. So that game went from like 2012 to like 2015 ish. I think maybe it puttered out in 2014 to 2015, but it was so much fun. And when that game died, the same way a lot of games die, where the schedule kills everything.
Scheduling.
And I was really one of the only. Like I was so dedicated to being at every single session. I ran my days around like making sure I had time to be there. And so Reed and Danny, I think, were the ones who initially talked about maybe doing a podcast. And then Reed brought me in and was like, hey, what do you think? And so I'm like, yeah, let's do it. They brought in Mike, who was like a professional, like one of the best designers in the state. And they didn't bring him in because he's a designer. They brought him in because he's just a fun guy to hang out with. So then we did our podcast, and we got my wife. We brought my wife in, And Kelsey was not going to play, but she watched. She sat on the couch while the four of us would play D&D at the table, and she got into it just by watching. When she realized how much of it was just like improv,
an acting kind of exercise,
joking around,
with
like
friends, yeah,
and being witty, and so she got super into it, and that was how Sneak Attack started. And we picked up a couple cheap mics in Reed's kitchen, which is a great place to record audio. And
it's great. It's the best.
And it was funny. That was 5th edition just came out. So we got we started doing the podcast like just on the coattails of like 5e being released. And it was awesome. Like that was super fun. And I got hooked.
I think it's tying your kind of religious background to D&D. I think you can always trace like so many people to one DM because you're like, me, Danny, da da da. It's Reed who's starting it all. And I feel like it's like the genealogy of like a scripture, like I am Jacob, son of Thomas, son of, like you can tie it to the first
I am Josh,
DM.
who was DM'd by Reed.
Yes, exactly. This is the genealogy of D&D. Is
for
all
real,
these DMs
like
branching out.
So I did a bunch of local games, like with a couple different groups of friends, and almost every single one of those, when I had to drop out, they kept going and just made somebody else a DM. And so it's like there is like this in Lincoln here in Nebraska, there is this like family tree of dungeon masters like stretching down from Reed. Like it is that is honestly what's so cool about this game is it is such a word of mouth experiential thing. You create stories with people, which is like we go to movies so that we can experience stories with people and then talk about those experiences together. This is like that on steroids. It is living the experiences in your imagination with people. And so you walk away with not just like shared stories that you can like remember together, but experiences and actions where it's like, oh, you did this, you did that. And yeah, it's the best, man. That's why I honestly feel like podcasts, like actual plays, is such a cool thing because we're getting to show. I feel like, and maybe this is putting too much clout on the medium, but like I think that actual play podcasts are a fundamental piece of the resurgence of 5e. The
100%.
The grassroots
100% agree.
community that got together and started making content. I mean, you got massive ones like Critical Role and what's the McElroys? They got their my brother and me.
I'm blanking on
Adventure
it. Yes, I know what
Zone,
you're
like
talking about.
the massive audience folk, like they pulled in, I think, more people than anybody. But I feel like the heat came from a bunch of smaller creators.
Oh yeah,
getting attention in on it, and everyone being like, "Oh my gosh, you can do this."
Well, and I think of it as it's like when you read a book, you know, one of your favorite childhood like books of a story, like a Harry Potter series or a Lord of the Rings, and there can be some amazing adaptations. Don't get me wrong. But like my wife worships the Harry Potter movies and books. She loves both of them. But I remember, I think that's what, and I'm tying it back to podcast, because when you see the medium for the first time of this story that you made up and imagined in your mind as you read, then you see it and you're like, that's not quite how I pictured that.
Right.
You know? But with podcasting, it is keeping the fantasy element of these fantasy stories, of creating it again, with Sneak Attack, I'll bring back with your characters and their look. You had in your mind an imagined look, but then so much fan art comes out of all different looks and shapes, and it's all true because it's all in our mind. We don't have to have a finalized permanent version of it that, hey, this is the way they look, and so you have to do it this way. And I think that's why people gravitate toward. There's so many 5e podcasts now and so many followers and listeners and just fandoms, because it allows people to follow a story, but also create the story and the visuals in their mind as they listen to it. And in that way, they're becoming part of the creation itself too.
Yeah. And in 2015, when we launched Sneak Attack, there was maybe 20 D&D podcasts, and the term actual play was not being used. No one had a name for what a D&D podcast was, which is crazy because that's just like 8 years ago.
And it's just commonplace now. Like, oh yeah, I listened to this actual play, and like, if anyone knows Dungeons & Dragons, they automatically know what you're talking about. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I listened to, before we started recording ours, I listened to, like the two that I checked out was There were 3. It was like Critical Hit, I think, was a D&D podcast.
Oh, yes.
D&D UI. Have you ever heard of them?
I have not heard of that one.
It's Dungeons & Dragons Under the Influence, and they drink during the game. Those guys are OG,
like
man.
It's like drunk history.
They've been around for a long time.
Oh, boy.
And then there was one that had some actors in it. Oh, what was it? It had that guy that he kind of plays like doofy teachers. He's like, "Hey, everybody." It's a deep voice. I hate that I'm trying to like make his voice. But anyhow, there was one that had like gosh, why can't I remember his name? Anyway, yeah, there's like one with some celebrities and then a couple other ones, but none of them were that big comparatively. I mean, podcasting was still not very big.
Yeah, it was a very niche market at the time.
Yeah.
And now it's just exploded where anybody can be doing it, even random people doing it remotely.
Oh, dude. I work full time at a podcast agency helping to produce podcasts for business to business companies. Like there are agencies now
that do this specifically to help produce.
Yeah. It's so cool.
All right. Well, we have another question, which we've kind of already talked a little bit about.
Yeah,
it,
I feel like you asked me like one question and I gave you like a whole smorgasbord.
That's the point of this is just to have an honest, organic discussion around. And we geeked out. Let's admit it. We geeked out about all those different things. So this is perfectly in line with the Meet and Geek. Huzzah. Huzzah. The second question we got is, what other interests or hobbies of geekdom do you have? We have Dungeons & Dragons, but there's other things. And what I specifically tie to this, I always bring up my own experiences. The first time I really experienced geekdom was, I don't know if you listened to I briefly mentioned this in my own Meet and Geek episode, but was going to a movie theater, and I don't even remember the movie I was going to go see, but I watched, I saw the trailer for Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings?
And yeah, Lord of the Rings. It was right when the Fellowship was coming out, and the trailer was there, and I remember sitting there in the movie theater going, that looks stupid. Like,
no.
Those people are short. That guy's got weird ears. Who's this guy with the long beard? This is going to be the dumbest movie. Fast forward to it being released in theaters, and somehow, some way, someone takes me to it, and me being like, just like enthralled with it. And that was the first time like I geeked about something. My brother was way into Star Wars. I was okay with Star Wars. I was like, hey, this is a fun thing, but I wasn't like geeked out tremendously about it. Lord of the Rings was my first geek experience. And so that's why I bring that up is, what are some things that you like can tie back to being like, I remember this is what I just geek out about. I love this so much.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, it was Dragon Ball Z, Star Wars, what else? Cartoons. We geeked out. Like my brother and my brother is the major geek. Like this is the dude who would make lists. Like it was I got him into Naruto.
Oh, okay.
I got into Naruto in like late middle school, early high school, 8th grade, 9th grade, and I fell in love in an instant. Like the tournaments, the like be stronger, like surge beyond your power. Like it was like it fed me so like in my soul. And I told him, I'm like, Ricky, you would love this. And he said, no way, it's dumb. It's such a nerdy anime thing. And like the big brother, thing to do. And I said, watch this one episode. You watch this one episode with me, man, and I'll get off your back. You just watch this one episode. And it was the episode, I believe it was when, if anybody who understands this, it's the first turn, the Chunin exams, I'm pretty sure. And it's when it was when Naruto fought Gaara. And it's awesome. I think in retrospect, the Rock Lee versus Gaara fight was much, much better in terms of just like being epic and awesome. But that was the one I had him watch, and he was in. Okay, so Jacob, I don't know if you know anything about Naruto. So there's jutsus and taijutsu and and sharingans and like there's tons of different types of like magical abilities and combat types. My brother went so ham into like the nerddom for that. After that, he far exceeded me. and he had whole binders full of like, this is this character and these are their type of abilities, and like he had it color coded. Like, so honestly, growing up, I pretty much like there's few things that I can point to like that where like I got my brother into something. For the most part, he was the chief nerd, and I just kind of like fed off of his nerddom.
You got the scraps, and then
but I loved it. There's like it was what got me into a lot of the things I like.
Yeah. That just reminds me of, I know it happened fairly recently where I was scrolling through, and I've heard, and I'm gonna hurt some hearts or cause some controversy here. I was scrolling through like just, a social media thing, and a video pops up with Titans. Not Titans of Altera, but like Titans, like Attack of Titans. And I've heard so much about it, and I watched like, it was a 5-minute little clip, and I was like, this is so stupid. I think this is how half of geekdom starts, where you're like, judge it. This is so stupid. Because I was watching and I'm like, this is so stupid. That's so dramatic. What are they talking about? Different kinds of Titans. Let me go to YouTube. And then Dude. I just fell down like a 3-hour rabbit hole of like, wait, so like, what happened to this one?
Okay, so like my brother and I, we would watch Dragon Ball Z every day after school, and that was like elementary school. Like Toonami. I don't know if you know what Toonami is.
Oh, well, I remember watching Dragon Ball Z. I remember vividly ingrained in my mind is when, I'm forgetting the character's name, but he turns into a frog. I just remember like laughing my head off about that.
Who turned into a frog?
It was one of the, I forgot. It was one of the guys. It was the guy
one of the Ginyu Force. It was Captain Ginyu.
Yeah. And he turns into a frog, and I remember just laughing my head off about that.
Yes, dude. The Namek saga is the best, and that was like seeing Goku go Super Saiyan for the first time.
Yep.
It's like my little like middle school head exploding. Or the Super Saiyan 3 was probably even like more intense. But yeah, man, if anybody is into D&D or not D&D, oh my gosh, all the letters, Dragon Ball Z, DBZ. That's what I want to say. Like, if you haven't checked out DBZ Abridged on YouTube, you are missing out. Like, so like.
Oh, I have to do it now.
These super fans of Dragon Ball Z put together like a brief cut edit of every arc up to the Cell saga, and they redubbed it. It is like gold. Like, I go back and watch that rather than watching the series because it's like all the feels and even more humor. So, yeah, and really good voice acting actually.
That's awesome. See what fans can do. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. Well, how did in this stuff you talking about kind of how some of your geekdom started and some things that you dove into? How have you seen things that you have geeked out about bleed into your playing or participating or creating in Dungeons & Dragons? I already see a connection because I already mentioned Titans, and you have Titans of Altera.
Attack on Titans, or Titans of Altera. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always been, I feel like D&D has always been very anime. Like, it is very much power levels, like epic quests. I mean, I look back and it's like, yeah, I love, like, it's really is. It's me getting to live out some of those like epic adventures that I watched growing up in cartoons. And so when I picture like scenes of like games that I've either DM'd or I played, it's always in anime. It's in like that special kind of like animation that's like, you know like when when an anime has like, they have like the budget saving animation where it's just the clearly one still camera that's like just got the mouth moving and like maybe the background moves behind it, but then there's a fight sequence and you clearly realize like half of that season's budget was on this one like 10-minute fight sequence, and it's like bonkers animated.
We had to draw so much fire. Gosh dang,
dude. Like, okay, like if anybody looks this up, man, I'm just telling you, Naruto versus Sasuke is when Sasuke like first leaves. They're fighting on the water. It is just, it's animated to the nines. It's amazing. But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, here, we're getting to our final question here. I'm loving talking
this
about
is
all
me.
this.
This is nerd. I can seriously,
That's
I
fine.
can go hard on any of these things.
This episode is for you to be proud of all things you love and all things you dive heavy into. Our last question is connecting it back to this for our podcast, the iCast Fireball podcast. Many of us have obviously, we've heard the first episode of you getting into this, but we want to, and I know a little bit about this, but I might even learn some new facts. Why did you pick to join this campaign? I know Thomas, I know the briefest of things. I know Thomas messaged you, you had some communication there, and you're like, yeah, I'm on board for it. What made you kind of want to jump onto this campaign? And then second, your character, Ralph, without going too much into the specifics, because that's for our Crunch Squad episode of what Ralph can do and things. How did you go about forming the character, Ralph?
So when we were putting out like an episode a week for Sneak Attack, kind of like I would say like our podcasting heyday, it was exhausting. And but we were also like much more popular than we'd ever been. And so like I got invites to jump into everybody's podcasts. Like they're like all like a bunch of, everybody started doing podcasts, and so I got tons of invites to like join in and guest on stuff, and I turned almost all of them down. I rarely jumped in. Like occasionally, I think in 2018 maybe I jumped in on a couple. We went on hiatus for like a half a year, and so I did a couple things, but for the most part I just didn't guest a whole bunch. And now it's kind of like that season's passed. I'm doing Titans, and we're doing like season 3, and we're going at a super leisurely pace because of the pandemic just wiped us out. Like it stopped Sneak Attack. We stopped producing Sneak Attack because of the pandemic. Titans slowed down intensely, and I'm constantly amazed at how many listeners have just stuck around despite like how infrequent we post and how we just haven't gotten back up to speed like we were. When we were in our heyday, I was an independent freelancer doing post-production work in animation and motion design, and we didn't have a kid. So it's like that was my life, was output and like just making stuff and spending my time on myself. And then this season of life, it's like I have less free time, but I feel like I'm more intentional with that free time than I've ever been. Like having a kid, it limits what you're capable of doing. Yes. But I feel like the best advice I ever got is from a YouTuber.
Best advice ever.
His name's Belief in Fatherhood, and I think his name's Belief, but his channel's like Belief in Fatherhood.
That's great. What's your name? Belief in Fatherhood.
No. Like what's crazy is I met him at a convention. And I had no idea he was a YouTuber. He just started talking to me, and I'm a nobody. And so like we're chatting it up, and I said we're thinking about having a kid, but it was a creator kind of thing, and I was like but I want to create full time. I want to be like doing this stuff creatively. I want a creative career. So I don't know if a kid like works into that. And he goes, hey man, listen, like here's my thing. Yes, you can't be as ambitious when you have kids, but you don't waste any time. Like what a kid does is it focuses you. You stop spending time doing things that don't matter, and you only do things that matter.
What really is worth my time, because I have so few of it. Such
and anybody who has kids, I feel like understands that. Like it gets pretty crystal clear. And what's interesting is on the creative side, I've become less enamored with publishing my stuff and so much more interested in supporting other people's stuff. And I'm just not engaged on social media like I was. I don't spend half as much time as I did before a kid on social media, which is where like I think a lot of the attention is when you're making content. But I love jumping on and pumping up like people who are doing good stuff and like sharing things I love. And so I don't get as many invites to join in on stuff as I used to. But in the last like year and a half, I haven't turned down a single request. Like anybody who reaches out to me is like, hey, you want to do an episode? I'm like, I'm in, and I'm in for as many as you want. Like
I will find the time. I will get that. That is what I want to do. Yeah. I remember when Thomas told us like, hey, I reached out to Josh, and we're like, okay. We're like, okay, yeah, he'll be like, wow, thank you for thinking of me. Like we wrote it off almost immediately because we were just like, because we knew like just based on like some of your posts and following Titans and stuff where like he's got a kid, he's doing Titans, he's got these things going on. And we've never heard him guest on anything when we were listening to Sneak Attack or anything. So we're like, this is so out there. And then like a week later, Thomas messaged us, he's like, Josh is in. We're like, Josh who? And he's like, the Josh. We're like, no way. we freaked out.
Yeah, it's so fun for me, man. So I honestly, if I had like an influx of dozens of people asking me, I'd have to get like pretty like particular. But honestly, at this point, like I'm like life's going well. I'm going full time at the job. I can't output as much as I used to, like personally. But it's so much easier. Like if I'm not the one creating the content,
yeah.
It's so easy to just take a couple hours.
Worry about. I mean, shout out to Mickey and that Mickey spends hours doing the editing and things.
She did so good. Like she does such a good job with you guys.
She's incredible. She's incredible. It's like her degree was around design and theater and stuff, which it was. She's just amazing. And I think I take the same attitude where I'm like, record for a couple hours, in our podcast and sweet. All right. What else can I go do? And then like Mickey's just like slaving over this, but it's just pure. I can't give the editors of podcasts, especially if they're doing it independently, enough credit. It's crazy.
But that's here's what I will say. I haven't turned anybody down, but I don't promote everything that I guest in as hard. There's some stuff I did like a couple years ago that it was okay. It was just like like for me, it has a lot more to do with with who's creating it. Like if I want to really try and like the stuff I really enjoyed. I was on, How Not to DM. Shout out my man Derek.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing great stuff, and that podcast is blowing up. It's awesome to see the cool people. He did some really like big interviews, and then he had to drop them because the people he interviewed said some bad stuff online. And isn't that like just like it's like, oh man, like you think you nailed something cool and then it goes south. And he held character, kept putting out good stuff, put in the work. Then I got another show that I'm guesting on. I don't think I can talk about it though because episodes aren't out yet. But like with another cool indie podcast that's like one dude who's running it and editing it and publishing it. So yeah, man, my ears always out for like new stuff. And one of my favorite things is just getting to know people who are creating and what they're doing and how they do it, because everybody's different, but we all kind of share that same scrappy roll your sleeves up, just get stuff, make stuff, and then the same kind of anxieties and fears and uncertainty of like putting out creative content and waiting to see what happens. So yeah, it was easy yes with you guys, and then after getting to know you guys after the first couple of recordings, I was like, okay, I'm in. As long as you guys want me to be jumping in, I'll jump in. This was super fun.
Yeah. Well, we're just loving every moment with you, and that brings us to the moments with you in this character, Ralph. What was your approach to not the mechanic side of it, not necessarily why'd you pick the class, why'd you do that? That's going to be more of a Crunch Squad episode, which Ned kind of gets into. But what the personality of Ralph, the personality, the dynamics, how you approach kind of the character themselves, how were you able to create this character?
So very much Ralph is a fun character. It's just I'd say when I first started making characters for D&D, I made them very much like myself. It was lawful good and sometimes religious. It was
this is the rules.
You can rely on me. I'm there for you, and I'm loud and I'm intense and the very much Greg Stronghammer, from Sneak Attack, and then when I started DMing for Titans. When you're the Dungeon Master, you're everything. You're the good guys, the bad guys, the neutral characters, the weird NPC that shows up.
Yep.
And I found myself really falling in love with duplicitous characters. It's like I love characters that have no real allegiances, but it's unclear if they're helpful or not, or if they're good guys or not, and like. I love those characters in books. I love those characters in movies, and they've just become some like an archetype that I enjoy portraying as a dungeon master, because it gives so much to me. It creates so much more dynamic with the players, because you can't just easily go good guy, bad guy. Like it's like is you're a guy, like you're Ralph. And that was very much a big inspiration for playing that type of character. And he's an elf because I feel like we've swung so hard against playing elves in the community. Like, because it really
true.
like one of the first things,
around.
one of the first things you tell first time players is everybody always picks an elf magic user because like elf wizard is like min max, blah, 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 or like a ranger, da, da, da. And so the last couple times I've made characters, I've made them elf magic users because I'm like, I just never did that. I never played that. It's always been like a taboo for me. And so now I want to do it, but I want to do it very like character flavor heavy rather than just like min-maxing. I want to like give them hiccups in their personality. And so so Ralph was very much, he is a very aloof elf mage, blade singer. Yeah, he's I'd say he's about as chaotic neutral as I've ever played a character. I don't even know if I've played a lawful neutral character, but yeah, like I've even played like a chaotic evil, but like he's very like chaotic neutral, very much just like in it for the ride and seeing where things go, just following whatever carrot is in front of him.
Oh, and we'll see that play out. Well, I think when this gets released, we've only had the first episode out, and no spoilers, but
there's little hints. There's
Ralph
little hints.
Definitely
of his...
goes where the wind blows him. In action and in conversation.
the episode 56, I think, was the first one. Is it 56?
56. Yep.
Yeah.
56.
So it's episode
Titled
56.
Joshua.
No.
That's what the title is.
Oh
Joshua.
Man. But like, there's the scene where you and I are talking, and and I'm kind of saying like, listen, you just give me a few minutes with these kids, and I'll get whatever information's out of them. No worries. And you're like, are you gonna hurt them? And I'm like, yeah.
I will hurt them. It's so interesting. That's funny because I, again, don't want to spoil anything. Lance Thalen is a neutral character as well. He's true neutral.
Okay.
But I think he might have changed a little bit as the podcast has kind of kept going, but I think that
second N is turning a little good. Like it's like
But it explains the dynamic though that will develop between Ralph and Lance, because it's kind of like, what are you doing? I'm doing what I want to do. What are you doing? I'm doing what I want to do. That's about it. Like, it's very like, hey, your interest is not my interest. How are we gonna do this? And it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to play.
It's super fun, man. It's been a blast. Like, I love that we're so far. We've already like gone through that arc more or less. But yeah, it was a blast, man. And I like that our characters kind of played off each other quite a bit.
Oh yeah, it's fun. I just encourage everyone, if you've stuck around, obviously, if you've listened to that first episode with Josh, it gets better and it gets crazier and it gets funnier and it gets unpredictable in how things are going down, and it's beautiful.
I gotta shout out Reed, the Dungeon Master of Sneak Attack, because 1, he taught me how to DM. 2, he's the one that really taught me the value in an incohesive D&D party. You really like, at least where you start out, where not everybody's gelled, where it's like there's still some like dissension within the group, and you create
there's disagreements, there's arguments, there's what are you doing over there?
Yeah, and so it's kind of fun because I know like your guys' party, the three of you have had that kind of like learning to work with each other, figure each other out, and then maybe like things are starting to work, and then this wrench comes into the of Ralph to just go like, man, I'm gonna screw things up a little bit, and then
I'm gonna try something different. Yeah.
It's great.
I've always maintained that because we try and base our podcast off improv principles, and we have the yes and is so true. And I think these two things can coexist, even though they can come into conflict. I think you can do yes and, but I think there's also a beautiful principle in storytelling where it's conflict breeds character.
Yeah,
you get more from a character out of anything with conflict. Conflict will really show you, 1, who the character is, and 2, where you could take them from where they've been.
Well, and it's like some great improv is just the whole where it's like, okay, so your character wants to go swimming with the other character, and then you talk to the other person, and your character is deathly afraid of water. go. And it's like you can yes and, but there's conflict. There's very clear conflict that is being played into that yes and experience. That's not just like people saying no every time, but there's this weird give and take of trying to push each other towards your own goal.
Oh yeah,
it's super fun. You guys do a great job.
Thank you. And we, again, I've said it a couple times, we are so appreciative of you being on. We're having a ball. I hope everyone listening is having a ball. We thank you so much, Josh, for not only being a part of our story, but also taking some time on the side to talk a little bit behind the scenes so we can get to know Josh, the geek.
Dude, thanks for asking questions. And legitimately, if anybody wants to talk anime, if anyone wants to talk board games, D&D, hit me up. I love it.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of iCast Fireball, special offshoot Meet and Geek. We hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed talking about all things geekdom, nerding out, and just loving the passionate things we're into. From wherever you get your podcast from, please leave us a review. It helps boost the ratings, and we just want to make sure it gets into other people's feeds. We're loving this idea. We're already actually seeing an increase with Josh's first episode out. We've had actually a big, all of a sudden, increase in our first downloads, our first episode downloads that we haven't seen bumped up in a while. So get the word out there. We are loving more and more people tagging onto the iCast Fireball train. If you want to write something a little bit longer of a review, or you just want to give us a little bit more of a personal message, you can always email us at icastfireball2020@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and again, we want to get the word out there so we can set this podcast on fire. All puns intended right there. Now, to get the most recent up-to-date content from us, go follow us on Instagram and Twitter under the handle icastfireball20. It's icastfireball20. There you can get possible sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. We had a fun week-long hint of that was posted every day on our stories of who our guest could be, finding out it's Josh in the end. That's where you can get all things iCast Fireball, also behind the scenes and just fun little things we find. Quick shout out to our sister podcast, Improv Tabletop, where our resident kobold, Ned, takes a term being the game master. He has these mini 1-month adventures that are fun, and they have their continuing Avatar Legends campaign, which is just amazing. Again, we've talked about anime this whole episode. If you like, obviously, Avatar, go check this out. This is an incredible story that they're creating over there. And also, we want to give a shout out for Josh here. Josh, what do you got to shout out to the people?
Check out Titans of Altera. We're still coming out with season 3. We just got an editor, and so we're gonna start putting out episodes on a consistent basis soon. And right now it's been kind of once a month or so, but we've got 6 in the wings, and we're publishing them as soon as we get them edited. So yeah, check out Titans. We got 2 seasons complete, or you can check out Sneak Attack. Literally over, I think, around like 200 episodes of content there that you can go check out, and some of it is poor, not as great audio as we do now, but
it's beautiful. Even
it's a full arc. You can check out a full story arc. Yeah, that actually finished.
In Flaw, there is beauty. It's amazing.
It's great, man. I've never laughed as much as I have doing Sneak Attack. It is one of the most fun D&D experiences of my life, for sure.
It is amazing. Everyone go check these 2 out. Literally, they have inspired us to do this one. So if you have never heard of them, go check them out. They are the masters of what we are even trying to do here. Lastly, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends and fellow wacky adventurers. Until next time, I am Jacob, your host for Meet and Geek. And again, we give a shout out to our guest, Josh. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a good night, everyone.